My name is Claire Morgan, and I'm 34 years old. For years, I thought my family's biggest problem was Dad having a favorite child. I was wrong. The real problem was that Dad had spent years believing my brother deserved things simply because he was his son. And the vineyard was the one thing I refused to let him decide. My grandfather left me Hawthorne Vineyard 8 years ago. It wasn't some glamorous estate back then. The vines were neglected, the old tasting room needed repairs, and the property taxes were a constant headache. But Grandpa had loved that land, and before he died, he told me something I never forgot. Don't let anyone convince you that you didn't earn your place here. So I stayed. I used my savings to repair irrigation. I learned about soil, pruning, harvest schedules, and wine production. I worked mornings in the fields and evenings handling invoices and customers. Slowly, the vineyard became profitable. My younger brother, Ryan, had almost nothing to do with it. He lived nearby, worked in construction, and visited occasionally. Yet Dad constantly talked about him as if he were the natural heir. One Sunday afternoon, we were having lunch at my parents' house when Dad suddenly put down his fork. "Your brother has been thinking about the vineyard," he said. I looked at Ryan. He smiled. "What about it?" I asked. Dad leaned back in his chair. "It belongs to the family. And eventually, it should belong to Ryan." I actually laughed because I thought he was joking. "Dad, Grandpa left it to me. It's in my name." His smile disappeared. "This vineyard belongs to your brother now. Stop acting like the owner." The room went completely quiet. Ryan didn't correct him. In fact, he started talking about expanding the tasting room, adding guest cabins, and changing the branding. He was planning my property as if I had already disappeared. I could have argued. Instead, I looked at Dad and said, "Okay." He seemed satisfied. But on the drive home, something bothered me. Dad hadn't said Ryan would inherit the vineyard someday. He had said it belonged to him now. That night, I opened the file cabinet where I kept my property documents. The original certified title was missing, and I stared at the empty space in the folder for almost a minute. I knew exactly where that document had been. The certified title was behind the same stack of tax records. Now it was gone. I searched the entire office. Nothing. Then I remembered something. A month earlier, Dad had asked for copies of my property documents. He said he wanted to understand the vineyard's value. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. The next morning, I called the county records office. I explained that I was the registered owner and wanted to know whether anything had recently been filed against the property. The clerk asked for my parcel number. I gave it to her. "Ma'am, I can see recent activity." My heart raced. "What kind of activity?" "I can't discuss the details until I verify your identity." After answering several questions, she gave me the information she was allowed to provide. A document connected to my property had recently been submitted. "What kind of document?" "You'll need to request the record through the proper process." I thanked her. Dad's words came back to me. "This vineyard belongs to your brother now." Suddenly, they didn't sound like an opinion. They sounded like a warning. That afternoon, Ryan called. "Dad says you're making this harder than it needs to be." "What exactly did Dad tell you?" "That the vineyard is being transferred." "To whom?" "You know." "No, Ryan. I don't." He sighed. "Dad already handled everything. You should accept it." My stomach dropped. "Handled what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "You've had the vineyard long enough. It's time to think about the family." I ended the call and opened a fresh folder on my computer. If someone was trying to change the ownership of my vineyard, I wasn't going to confront them based on suspicion. I was going to collect facts. I gathered tax receipts, insurance records, maintenance invoices, bank statements, and Grandpa's inheritance paperwork. Then I noticed something disturbing. Several recent vineyard expenses had been submitted under Ryan's name. Not mine. Ryan's. It was then that my phone rang. "Dad." "Claire, your brother has plans for that place." "What kind of plans?" "You'll find out soon enough." Then he hung up. I looked at the documents spread across my desk. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. Dad wasn't guessing that the vineyard would belong to Ryan. He believed the paperwork had already been done. 3 weeks passed. Dad stopped mentioning the vineyard. Ryan stopped calling. I wondered if I had overreacted. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Is this Claire Morgan?
Yes.
Who's calling? My name is Melissa Grant. I'm a title investigator working on a property transaction involving Hawthorne Vineyard. I sat up straight. What transaction? She paused. Did you recently sign a deed transferring your ownership interest in the vineyard?
No.
You're certain? I'm absolutely certain. I haven't signed anything. Her voice became serious. Then we have a problem. My hands went cold. What kind of problem? A deed has been submitted containing a signature that appears to belong to you. Someone had created a document saying I had transferred my own property. Who submitted it? I can't give you all the details over the phone yet, but I recommend that you obtain a copy of the filing and speak with an attorney. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone. Dad's voice echoed in my head. Your brother has plans for that place. You'll find out soon enough. That afternoon, I contacted an attorney and explained everything. She told me not to confront my father or brother until we knew exactly what had been filed. 2 days later, the documents arrived. I opened the first page. There was my name, my property, my legal description, and at the bottom was a signature that was supposed to be mine. It looked convincing, but it wasn't mine. This one had small differences that immediately stood out. My attorney examined it carefully. Then she turned the page. This isn't just a simple transfer, she said. I looked at her. What do you mean? The document appears to create a chain that could eventually place control of the property into a business connected to your brother. My stomach tightened. So, Ryan knew?
We don't know that yet.
Then she pointed to the filing date. The deed had been submitted only days after Dad announced that the vineyard belonged to Ryan. This wasn't a family argument anymore. Someone had put paperwork behind Dad's words. My attorney looked at me. Does your father have access to your old property documents? I swallowed. Yes. And suddenly, the missing title didn't feel like a coincidence. The next morning, my attorney called me before I had even finished breakfast. Claire, we found something. I grabbed my notebook.
What?
The county records show that someone used copies of your older property documents when preparing the disputed deed. My stomach tightened. Can you tell who? Not yet, but we're getting closer. I didn't need to ask who she suspected. That afternoon, Melissa, the title investigator, called again. The county has placed a hold on the transaction, she said. They found inconsistencies between the deed and the supporting ownership records. I exhaled. So the vineyard is still legally mine? Your ownership has not been transferred through this disputed filing. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe, but I still needed answers. I called Ryan. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near the vineyard. When he arrived, he looked nervous. I placed a copy of the disputed deed on the table. Did you know about this? Ryan stared at the document. I knew Dad was working on paperwork. What paperwork? He said he was arranging everything so I could take over the vineyard. Did he ever show you this? Ryan hesitated. Yes. Did you see me sign it?
No.
Then why did you believe it was mine?
He looked down.
Because Dad told me you had agreed. I felt something inside me break, not because Ryan had believed Dad, but because he had never once asked me, did you know about the business? His eyes widened. What business? I showed him the section connecting the transfer to an entity associated with him. Ryan leaned back. I didn't know anything about that. For the first time, I realized he might not have understood the full plan either. That evening, I went to my parents' house. Dad opened the door. The moment he saw the folder in my hand, his expression changed. You went too far, he said.
No, Dad.
You did. I placed the documents on the kitchen table. You took copies of my property records. A deed was filed with a signature I never made. And you told Ryan the vineyard already belonged to him. Dad crossed his arms. I was keeping the vineyard in the family. You were trying to take my property. That was never the intention. Then what was? He didn't answer. I waited. Finally, he said, Ryan is your brother. He deserves something. I looked at him. So because he's your son, you decided something that belongs to me should become his? Dad's confidence disappeared. I continued quietly. The title investigator has flagged the transaction. My attorney has the documents. And the county is reviewing everything. He stared at me. Then he said something I'll never forget. You'll never prove I did anything wrong. I closed the folder. I don't need to prove what you intended. I looked him directly in the eyes. I only need to prove what happened. The next morning, my attorney called again. Her voice sounded different. Claire, there's another document. And this time, it was even more serious. The second document changed everything. My attorney sent it to me that afternoon. This one shows an attempted transfer involving a business connected to Ryan. I stared at the screen. So, this wasn't just about putting the vineyard in his name?
No, she said.
It appears there was a larger plan. I felt sick, but I also felt strangely calm. For weeks, I had been wondering whether I was imagining things. Now, there was a paper trail. My attorney immediately took the proper legal steps to challenge the disputed documents and protect my ownership while the records were reviewed. A handwriting specialist examined the signature on the deed. The conclusion wasn't what my father had expected. There were significant inconsistencies. The county continued its review, and the questionable transfer was placed under investigation. Then Ryan called me. I need to tell you something.
What?
I'm sorry. I didn't answer. He continued. I really thought Dad had talked to you. I thought you were giving me the vineyard. You never asked me. I know. His voice cracked. I should have. For the first time, I understood that Ryan had been willing to accept something he had no right to claim. But Dad was the person who had started this. A few days later, he finally admitted that he believed I would eventually give the vineyard to Ryan voluntarily. Asked him why. His answer was simple. Because he's your brother. I almost laughed. Dad, being my brother doesn't make him the owner of my property. He looked down. I was trying to keep it in the family. I shook my head. You don't keep something in the family by taking it away from someone who legally owns it. That was the last serious conversation we had about the vineyard. The legal process eventually confirmed my ownership position, and the disputed transfer was not allowed to replace my legitimate title. Ryan stopped making plans for the property. Dad stopped telling people it belonged to him. And I made one decision of my own. I wasn't selling the vineyard. I was keeping it. Not because I wanted to prove my father wrong. Not because I wanted to punish my brother. I kept it because Grandpa had trusted me with something meaningful, and I had spent 8 years protecting it. Months later, Dad came to the vineyard. He stood near the entrance, looking across the rows of vines. This place has changed, he said. Yes, I replied. He was quiet for a moment. Do you really intend to keep everything? I looked at the vineyard. The same land where I had worked before sunrise. The same vines Grandpa had once walked beside. The same property my father had tried to give away. Yes, I said. Then I turned toward him. Because I didn't inherit a favor from you. I paused. I inherited a responsibility from Grandpa, and I kept it. Dad didn't argue. He simply nodded and walked away. And as I watched him disappear down the driveway, I realized the title investigator's phone call had given me something more valuable than a piece of paper. It had shown me the truth. Sometimes, the hardest betrayal isn't losing something you own. It's discovering that the people you trusted believed they had the right to take it from you. But when the truth is documented, when the evidence is clear, and when you refuse to surrender your voice, you don't need to fight with anger. You simply stand your ground. And sometimes, that's the strongest victory of all.